Hey everybody, it's Alan from Woodcrest Bonsai. And a few weeks ago I cut back all my seedling elm trees quite hard. And I featured these two on a video where I also root pruned them. And as you can see, they've sprouted like crazy. And just like the bald cypress that I did yesterday, it is now time to begin to style these guys. Remove excess growth, see where we're going with this thing. Going to leave some sacrifice branches. But let's start with this one here. So I'm looking for motion and taper. And on elms, a huge amount of taper is really all that not that necessary. Some of these guys could be sacrifice branches. This eye poker branch I'm just going to take off completely, mainly so we get a better idea of the way the tree is flowing. This could very easily be a first main branch. So I'm going to take, just with the bald cypress, some of this really thin growth can just be pinched off with your fingers. I want to shorten this though, and I'm going to shorten it to a leaf that's going to point it horizontal. I also have this little tiny piece right here, which is coming from just behind. So I could very easily use this as the first main branch. But for now, I'm just going to do that. I'm also going to shorten this one. Then when we get up here, you can see the apical dominance. This one has gone crazy. And do I want it to continue that way? And no, I don't. I want it to be an informal upright. So up and then back and then back and then back. And this one is the best choice for that. So this guy's also going to get shortened tremendously because I want to pump the energy to this guy. And the growth is so tender. And I guess my scissors aren't quite sharp enough either. So there we go. Just a very simple removal of some of the things that I know for sure I don't want. I'm going to leave some sacrifice branches. I shortened this possible first main branch, but I'm really thinking if I have a choice between a thick one and a thin one, I almost always choose the thin one. Because over time that thick branch will become out of proportion with the rest of the tree. Sometimes you can even get them to be almost as thick as the trunk itself, which never really looks very natural. So that's the first one. Then let's get the second one in here. The second one has a very nice little fat trunk. And you can see the scars from where I cut off other large limbs. And once again, we have a beautiful informal upright. I'm going to remove this one, mainly just to give you a view of the tree. This is the obvious leader. This first main branch is already very heavy, so I'm going to cut it way back. And I think I'm actually going to cut it off to here. And then take it to this leaf here, which we come this way. And then I'm going to shorten this one too. And this could be a sacrifice branch, but it's right in front. So I'm going to take it off too. And then we need a branch in the back. And typically, I try to get my back branches to be in between branch number 1 and branch number 2 and a branch going in the back. So this guy could end up being a back branch. And once again, I'm going to trim it to a leaf that's pointing to the back. And then, we have the distance here, which is a little bit longer than the distance here. So to turn this into a tree with really nice proportions, this part needs to be even shorter than this part. So I'm going to trim it to about there. And there we go. You know, once again, it's now a skeleton, but it's on its way. This branch here, now that it's shooting down, might give us some very interesting effect with branch number 1. Branch number 2 is going to shoot this way. We have our new apex, although I want more growth to go this way so the tree will have some nice movement. This is a little angular, but as the tree gets thicker and thicker, that angularity will soften. So I'm not worried about that right now. But I had some of my viewers sort of gasp at how hard I cut these back. But you can see they responded beautifully. And I'm going to bring 3, 4, 5 more that I didn't necessarily feature in the last video, but you'll see they have all responded beautifully. This next tree got a huge chop right there. And so that's going to take a little while to heal. And, you know, this is a plastic bonsai pot. But as I've said in many other videos, when I'm training trees like this length, which would be the front, or this be the front, is not necessarily the final front of this tree. The final front of this tree could be just about anywhere. Because this really, even though it's in the shape of a bonsai pot, is still just a training pot. So this could make a very interesting front right here. Come up into here. I would need to manipulate it a little bit. If this is the first main branch, it's a little heavy already. But look at all the growth. Cut back tremendously and just popped like crazy. So, you know, depending on where you are, you still may be heading into spring. I'm well into spring. So I needed to do this much earlier than most people because spring occurs here much earlier. So if you're wondering, should I really cut this stuff back as hard as Alan does? Give it a try. Now, there's another possibility that I could take all this off and bring this up as the new leader. There's so many different possibilities for this tree. And typically when I don't say, okay, I know what I want, because on the first 2, I did know what I want. I saw the tree and I said, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'm going to cut this and I'm going to chop that. On this one, it's a little bit less obvious, but I still want to do some trimming. So our chop here is going to heal much more quickly if I leave this, because it's going to feed the vellum to heal that wound. But this is very aggressive growth, and I have the feeling, you see how it's aggressively it's growing, that this could possibly become the new leader. The tree could actually send so much energy to this branch right here that it ends up growing way up, and these branches in the back that are attached to this older one could possibly be, I don't want to say ignored by the tree, but it's going to put a whole bunch more energy into this. So do I want that? That means all the movement and the branching in here is discounted. You know, if this is possibly the next main leader, that will definitely increase the amount of time before the tree is a finished tree. But that may not necessarily be that bad. So right now I'm just kind of in a place with this tree. We're just going to do a basic haircut and just see what happens. I'm going to let this one grow like crazy because I want it to heal there, but I'm figuring I will probably chop it off at some point. We've got a couple potential sacrifice branches. The tree has some decent nabari. It's certainly not perfect, but some decent nabari. And so for today, I'm not really saying, okay, here's my tree, this is what I want. I'm just going to trim it back, and it will reveal itself over time. It will begin to grow, and then you'll say, oh, okay, this is what I want to do. I mean, I could take it even to here, this little tiny piece right here. I could chop all this off and all that off and make that the leader and have this crazy crook. There's so many different things I could do with this tree. But for now, just a basic cutback. And I brought another tree with me, but although I need to reach over to grab it. Once again, the amount of growth that these guys have popped since I cut them is really quite amazing. So now this one has the scar here, but there's some damage here on the trunk, and that can kind of help make the tree look that old. Now this is interesting here because this part here is also growing very vigorously, almost straight up, but I'm not entirely sure I want that. It's almost like a water shoot. You see how everything else is fairly similar as far as thickness, and then this one it's almost like what's the term? Almost like a gall or something. So do I even want that? And I say no, especially since I already just snapped it off. That's a good way to make a decision. Move the branch around and have it break. So once again, this is another perfect example of the pot. This is the front, or this is the front. But I'm looking at, this is going to make a much better front with the movement, and then we've got our movement up here. So then I like my first main branch to emerge at the outside of the curve, and right now we have 3 choices for that. This is very heavy, very, very heavy. So I'm thinking that this might make a better front, and choose one of these much smaller branches to be the first main branch, in which case the really heavy knob of this branch comes off, because it just is going to be out of proportion once the tree gets any older. This appears to be dead, so I'm going to take that off. All this stuff here below what's going to be the first main branch is all going to be sacrifice branches. And in the next trimming, I may in fact remove some of them. Remember, a sacrifice branch will thicken the trunk from where it emerges down. So since there's so many, I could actually get a little bit of reverse taper here. And then I would need to take this little tiny guy, there's a couple of them, and let it grow to thicken it down further. So too many sacrifice branches can actually cause some reverse taper, because the trunk will thicken all in that area where all these sacrifice branches are. So I think this is going to be a nice front. And also these guys are exhibiting directional growth. If like this, all the leaves are going that way, and if we bring it this way, all the leaves are going that way. That's because this tree is facing south this way. So because the sun is to the south, this tree is growing towards the sun. And on this side, everything's going that way. You can see all the leaves on these guys here are all pointing like that, all pointing towards the sun. So, especially on small trees, it's important to spin them around. At this early stage, it's not that big of a deal. But directional growth can actually create a little bit of problems. Okay, then I have a cut back here, but it did not grow. The sprouts came from way down low, so it comes off. And then if this is the first main branch, I'm going to shorten this guy. This will be branch number 2. And I have a back branch, and all the rest of this stuff is all basically superfluous. I'm going to remove these guys right here. And then once again we have a certain distance here, we have a certain distance here, and then so the apex wants to be a little bit, or the next movement of the trunk wants to be a little bit shorter than that. So I'm going to prune it to right there. And I'm also going to take this guy to there. And I think this is a much better main branch because this one's coming straight out at us, so I'm going to remove that too. There we go. And for now I'm going to leave all this excess growth that's all basically going to be sacrifice branches. So this one was a little bit more straightforward than the previous guy. And that's okay. They all grow a little bit differently. They're all going to have a little bit different character. Although since they're all my trees, they're all going to look pretty close because I have a certain style that I like. And if you are watching YouTube videos of other people, you'll come to be aware of just how similar their trees are. People have a certain style and they like a certain way the tree moves. And there are many bonsai people out there that have magnificent trees, but they do still have that style that they like and that they use to produce their trees. So I'm going to get a couple more. So these two are in 6-inch bulb pans, as are the rest of them. In fact, I have some smaller ones that are even in 4-inch bulb pans. And I have about 20 more of these to go, so I'm not going to do all 20. It just makes no sense to do all 20. I will do all 20, but not necessarily on camera. So now this is an interesting tree because it just really wasn't going anywhere as far as the old growth, so I just chopped it. I just chopped it to right there. And now it's just sprouted like crazy everywhere. And I may actually make this guy into a broom style. So let all of these guys take off. This will probably be the new leader. But let them all take off as more of a broom style. And so to that end, I'm just going to leave it. I'm not even going to pinch. I'm just going to let it go crazy and turn it into more of a broom style, which for me is fairly rare. I don't have a lot of broom style trees, so this is a good time to experiment growing a broom style. And then the last one I'm going to show on the video is another one that's much more classic, the way I like my trees. Had the cutback right there, and of course 2 years ago, the cutback was right here. So 2 years ago, they were just little sticks. Then I let them grow, and then I cut it back more right there. And then there was another cutback right here. But this guy, this could be the fun. You notice the directional growth? How all the leaves are pointing this way, and if we spin it around, they're all going that way. That's because they're going towards the sun. But I like this as the front. Tiny little guy here for main branch number 1, but that's okay because it's going to be in better proportions. I'm going to take this one off. I may leave a couple of these as sacrifice branches to thicken the trunk. And then we get up to the top here. I'm going to take that one off. And I'm going to take this one, only so we can see. And we've got 2 branches that are both coming out of basically the same place that are in perfect position to be branch number 2. So this one's a little bit stronger and this one's a little bit weaker, so I'm going to take the stronger one. I may wait because they're too close together and they're just too small. So I don't want to damage one. So now again, I'm looking for movement and taper, and this should be the longest proportion. This one here is almost the same. So up into here, I need to do something in here to create the informal upright look that I'm looking for. So I'm going to take that to there. And then most of the rest of this stuff here all needs to be shortened. And of course what will happen is it'll just pop new growth again. And in a month or so, it'll just be all sprouted back out. But this is how I do my trees. Let them grow, especially in the early years, let them grow as long and as thick as they want, and then cut them way back. Let them grow again from the cut back, and then cut that way back, and then let them grow again and cut back. And every time you cut back, you're getting more and more of the structure of the tree. I don't want to just be cutting back to just stumps every time. The first cut back is almost always creating just a stump. But as they grow, and these are only, 2-year-old seedlings, so they're really doing beautifully. And they will be taller trees, probably a little bit taller than shohin. So they will be called what they call one-hand trees. I always find it rather comical that the Japanese term for how large a tree is translates into how many hands it takes to carry. So once you get past shohin, there's one-hand trees, which this would be a one-hand tree. Then there's two-hand trees, and there's four-hand trees. And believe it or not, there's actually 8-hand trees, which means you need 4 people to lift the thing. I don't have too many of those because I'm only one guy. So there you go. What was that? 6 elm trees. I have so many more, but it's all the same process. So if it's becoming spring where you are, don't be afraid to cut back. Now these are elms. I showed you bald cypress yesterday. Once again, massive cut back, and they sprouted like crazy. Except for pines and junipers. Virtually every other tree has what's called adventitious buds. So this is a perfect example. I cut this back to basically a stump, and it just popped everywhere. And because there's a certain amount of apical dominance, we now have these 2 guys that are going to shoot like crazy. These lower guys will still grow, but these will get most of the energy of the tree. So don't be afraid to cut back hard. That's how I get taper and movement, which is what I want in my bonsai. So there we go. We'll put these guys future broom style, and obviously another informal upright. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you are getting close to spring where you live and you want to do some major cutbacks, leave me a comment. Just do it. Maybe you might have multiple trees in training. Try it at least on 2 or 3. Really cut them back hard and see what happens. As for me, that was the only way I knew how. I could watch somebody else do it all day long, but all I learned was that they knew how to do it. In order for me to learn, I had to do it. I had to take the clippers and I had to whack. I had to do the chop. And then observe, see what goes on. And my channel is so new, I don't have a beautiful old elm to show you. So I need 2 or 3 years for these guys to develop. And then we'll be able to come back to these videos and I can show you, there are some bonsai people that have a 3 or 4 year progression of their trees because they've been doing YouTube 3 or 4 years. And that is so helpful. You can see, oh wow, look at that, little tiny seedlings, and then they grow the next year and the next year and the next year. And so I'm headed in that direction, but I've only been doing it for a little over a year. So I just don't have the quantity of videos to show you that progression. So please subscribe and hit the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment. I know a lot of people, beginners, this is probably the biggest fear beginners have, is to do some hard chops because they're just afraid they're hurting the tree too much. But trees will respond. They have evolutionary, I don't know what you'd even call it, but they will respond to a hard chop because it's a survival technique. So don't be afraid to chop hard. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.